Hey y'all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is MOGIBETH, and for those of y'all who are new here, I own a 6-figure reselling business selling primarily women's clothing on places like Poshmark and eBay. And in today's video, we are doing a fun Q&A video. This video is coming out on my daughter's due date, June 23rd. So we'll see if she's come before then or hasn't come yet. For today, I thought it'd be fun to do a Q&A. I went on Instagram and asked y'all if you had any questions for me, and I received a bunch of questions, so I thought I'd go ahead and answer them. I went through all the questions and categorized them, and there were some topics that came up time and time again. So those topics are liquidation, the baby, how to generate sales, which I call sales generation, whatnot, and then there are a bunch of other random questions that I wanted to answer. So that's how I'm going to break down the video. We'll put little chapters down below in case you want to skip ahead and you don't really care about, whatnot, for example. But yeah, this will just be a fun little, hopefully short video where we can just hang out together, drink some tea, grab your favorite beverage, and we'll just talk about reselling. All right, let's jump into it. Okay, so the first topic is liquidation, and before I jump into this topic, I want to say that I've done a video on liquidation, which I'll link up on the screen. I probably answered a bunch of the questions in that video, so if you haven't watched that video, I'd highly recommend it. Of course, I can't give out where I purchased my liquidation. Resellers who depend on liquidation anyway do not share their sources. They're not always the easiest to find. A good place to start is Google, but there are a lot of resellers who have great liquidation sources that I have not privy to, and I would never ask them for that because they would never share that information. So I, as well, am not going to share where I get my liquidation, but I will try to answer some of these other questions. So first question is, do you think you would make as much without your wholesale products? And this is actually something I wanted to point out. Liquidation is not wholesale. So wholesale is when you purchase something brand new. So people who sell on Poshmark boutique items, they're buying wholesale. They're buying from the manufacturer who produced those items. Liquidation, on the other hand, you're buying things primarily that have already been produced and attempted to sell. So you think of big box retailers like Macy's, Target, Walmart. They have inventory that they can't move or that gets damaged or that gets returned. And so they sell it through liquidation. That's primarily what liquidation is. So it's not wholesale, you're not buying it brand new. And because of that, you'll get damaged inventory, you'll get inventory that just won't sell, because if it wouldn't sell for Target, why would it sell for you? And it's not entirely glamorous. Wholesale comes with its own set of headaches. Typically, your wholesale profit margins are going to be a lot slimmer. I've never dabbled in wholesale. I couldn't tell you anything about wholesale, but I have no interest in doing wholesale. So, next question was my average cost of goods for thrifted versus liquidation. I don't track this data, so I don't track in where my inventory is coming from, and so I don't have an average for that. But I would say in Portland, my thrifted inventory from regular Goodwills is higher than my liquidation inventory. However, there's a caveat to that. So when I receive a liquidation pallet, say I pay $5,000 and I receive 1,000 items. That's just, random, easy math. So it'd be $5 per item. That is how I calculate my cost of goods. And then I go through that pallet, and usually about 30 to 40% of that pallet I can't sell, either because it's damaged or it's just doesn't have any resale value. And so what I do is write off that inventory as unsellable or damaged inventory. And I'm not an accountant, so don't take any accounting advice from me. But if I were to look at the true cost of goods, meaning I take that out and then cost average, it would be a lot higher. So that being said, liquidation is expensive, especially when you take into account that a lot of what you're buying through liquidation, at least in my experience, can't be sold. And it really kind of depends on where you're buying it from and how much you're paying per piece. You can pay higher per piece for higher end retailers, and that number of what you can't sell will be lower, but it's a trade-off each and every time, because you're almost always, unless you're getting just shelf pulls, gonna get some damaged inventory that's just unsellable. So I hope that helps answer your question. Obviously, the cheapest way to source is the bins. And so the bins is way, way, way cheaper than both the thrift store and liquidation and online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, consignment, you name it. the bins is the cheapest way to source, at least, you know, here in Portland and probably beyond. I mean, there are probably some thrift stores out there for some of y'all that are cheaper. Like, I know there are dollar days, but anyways, okay, moving on. This was a question I got a few times. What percentage of your business is retail arbitrage versus liquidation versus thrifting in person? How much of your profits come from liquidation versus thrift? So I, again, don't track this information, but I did actually go back and just look at my May sales, my most recent full month of sales. I did go through and enter that data of where each item came from, because I was just really curious. I didn't really know that answer that question off the top of my head. And I'll put up this graph on the screen, which is just from my May sales. 58.6% came from liquidation, so still the majority of my sales are coming from liquidation. The next highest was thrift items, 15.2% came from thrift. Then the bins, 10.3%. Then retail arbitrage was 9.9%. Online arbitrage was 5.3%. And then items from consignment were less than 1%. And it really just depends on the month, what I'm listing. But I will say I'm actually really being drawn to just getting away from liquidation these days. I feel like I have a much better sell-through rate with my hand-selected inventory. And since we are, you know, scaling to a point where we're just basically listing 75 to 100 per week, we'll see when the baby comes if it's going to be doable for me, but I think I could source that many items per week without liquidation. But if the baby just makes that impossible, then I can just fall back on liquidation. And, you know, time and time again, I've had to do that anyway. So for our business, it's a good option to have, but I'm really becoming disillusioned with liquidation, and it's really not my favorite inventory to source anymore. Okay, on to the next topic, and that is baby. I am filming this on June 15th, and so tomorrow I'm 39 weeks pregnant, so she should be coming any day now. But I wanted to answer some questions that y'all had about having a baby and everything like that. So the first one is, how did you know you were ready to handle having a baby? Thinking about trying for one. So I wasn't, I guess, technically ready to have a baby. It was an unplanned pregnancy, but when I did find out I was pregnant, I was really, really excited, and I did just kind of feel not ready, but I felt like I could figure it out. I think that's a big part of my pregnancy thus far, and I think going into motherhood is I'm just trusting that I can figure things out. I'm reading as much as I can, learning as much as I can, but also just doing my very best day by day and learning as I go. And you know, that's been kind of my approach to everything in life. I didn't know how to resell. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to be, you know, have employees, and I just do my best and figure it out as I go. I think it's important to be somewhat ready in two important ways. First is emotionally ready. You know, I think part of growing up and becoming more mature is becoming emotionally regulated and being able to really, you know, work through your own emotions and regulate your own emotions. There's a quote from a podcast I listened to recently that was like, disciplining your child is really more about disciplining yourself, because you're in a very stressful situation and you're just having to keep yourself calm, which I don't think I could have done in my early 20s, and we'll see how well I'll be able to do it in my early 30s. But I think everyone's different in that regard too. It just depends on how you were raised and your personality. And then I think financially, just having some financial stability makes a huge difference. When we found out we were pregnant, that was kind of the hardest piece for us, because we are in the midst of trying to launch a business, like a very ambitious startup. We were in the middle of it when we found out we were pregnant too, and that is very taxing financially, emotionally, time-wise. So that was just kind of the hard part about figuring out logistically how we were going to do both. And we're still figuring it out day by day, like I said. So yeah, I think there's some truth to you'll never be ready, but I think in terms of just emotional maturity and regulation, and in terms of financial stability, if you feel like you've come to a place where you are really happy with yourself with both of those, and happy where you are in your life with both of those, then the rest, I think you can figure it out. But then again, I'm not a parent yet, so don't take my advice. Okay, so are you taking maternity leave from your business, for how long and what will it look like. So I'm taking semi-maternity leave. I am trying to shoot as many YouTube videos as possible up front. I've shot all my thrift with me's for the summer. Now I'm shooting kind of my sit down videos. So taking that off of my plate for the summer will be massive because it does take a lot of time to film YouTube videos. And then in terms of reselling, I really delegated a lot to my employee, and we are just cutting back a little bit for the summer in terms of the amount of items we're listing each week. So that will be a big relief. I'll still probably work on reselling about 45 minutes to an hour each day, but that's, I think, manageable. And then in terms of our startup that I mentioned, that is sometimes very demanding of my time, and then some days it's not. So I will be working on that as much as I have been, if not more so during the summer. So I'm taking, you know, I have like 3 different businesses, taking different types of leaves from each one. But mainly I'm just gonna try to scale back as much as possible, but I'll still be available and I'll still be working to some degree. And for how long, I'm really planning on, you know, the end of August. I am out of content in terms of YouTube and TikTok and all of that stuff. So probably mid-August, I'll start jumping back in and filming and going back to my regular, you know, at least content creation schedule. But, you know, I could cut back on YouTube videos. I could cut back on my social media presence. We'll see. Okay, what are your plans for balancing it all? Again, it's just kind of figuring it out one day at a time and being very, very, very clear about my priorities and being willing to say no to things that I have been really used to saying yes to before. But, you know, other than that, I am very, very much just allowing myself to take it day by day. So before you had employees, how did you prepare for vacation? What is it like now? So before I had employees, when I'd go on vacation, I would try my best not to put my accounts in vacation mode. I just wouldn't list. So I would ask like my dad, my boyfriend, my friends to ship for me, and I would pay them to ship for me, and I would train them how to do it. And so they'd come in, like, you know, say I was gone a week, they'd come in twice and do my shipping. And that was just, you know, I didn't want to curtail revenue, but of course there's always a dip when you're on vacation because you're just not listing. I didn't usually put the pressure on myself to like get a ton done ahead of time so that I could list throughout vacation, but that's also something you can do. If you want things to just run as they normally would, that's definitely an option. And if you have the bandwidth for it, I think that's great. But I think having a couple people in your life who are willing or able to come in and do your shipping for you is just great. And it's actually pretty easy to train how to do it, especially if you're primarily a Poshmark seller and you have a solid inventory system. But now going on vacation is a whole lot easier because, I mean, I don't even go into the office. If I go on vacation, I can work remotely. And when I haven't been on vacation in a very long time, but when I went to Mexico, for example, in like the beginning of 2020, I just worked while I was on the beach. It was great. That's kind of my dream, is just to be able to work, you know, anywhere in the world. So it's, with employees, it becomes a whole lot easier. Unless you don't want to work, in which case it's just, you know, you kind of go back to what you were doing before where you just don't list while you're on vacation. Do you have idea of a new work schedule with the baby? I think it really depends on the baby's sleeping schedule, how much sleep we're getting. The good thing I will say is that Matt and I are business partners. We're also, you know, parenting partners, we're life partners. So we're tackling, you know, our parenting as a team. We're gonna try as much as possible. So for instance, like, I'm gonna sleep with the baby one night, he's gonna sleep with the baby one night, but when we're not with the baby, we're gonna try to let the other one get as much sleep as possible. So we'll see how that works out. It might just end up being where I'm with the baby most of the time, and that's okay. But luckily I have Matt who can step in and do a lot of the work for me. But having that and having, you know, us as a team working on this together makes a huge difference. But in terms of schedule, we're just gonna have to figure it out. Okay, so the next topic is sales generation. So a lot of questions kind of fell into one of two buckets. One was, how do I increase sales? And I'll read some of the questions y'all had specifically about that. And then the other one was just different sales generation tactics. So when it comes to relisting or lowering your prices, or how do you determine whether something's just not going to sell? So let's focus first on just increasing sales. The first question was, I feel like I've grown my available inventory, but my sales are staying stagnant. How do I get past it even when it's stuff that does well? Similar to that question, I got tips to increase sales, please. And then the next is, any advice to start getting consistent sales? So let me just break this down. And I'm going to focus on profit. So the amount of money that you take home at the end of the day, not necessarily profit margin, but just profits. If you're trying to increase your profit, you as a reseller basically have 4 kind of levers that you can pull. And this is assuming that when you pull one of these levers, that everything else remains constant, which in reality isn't always the case, but just we're assuming. So what you can do is you can increase your volume, increase the amount of items that you are listing. Everything else staying constant should increase your gross profits. The second lever you have is your sell-through rate. So that is increasing the amount of items that sell within your inventory within a given period. The third lever is increasing your average sales price. And again, that's having everything else remain constant. And then the last lever is decreasing your cost of goods. So if you've been increasing your inventory and yet your sales are still staying stagnant, that means something else within that equation has gone down, whether it's your sales price or your cost of goods has gone up or your sell-through rate has gone down. When I introduced liquidation into my business, obviously my active inventory went up, I had a whole lot more inventory coming in that we could process. However, my sell-through rate went down. So that is kind of the business model that you're looking at. And I've done a video on 3 different types of business models that I'll link up on the screen. It was the first module on our course, which I would highly recommend you watch. It breaks down kind of the 2 successful business models that resellers can establish, and the one that a lot of people get kind of caught within, that it's typically not quite as successful. So I know that's kind of a broader answer to that question, but I would look at your business model and see how much you're listing on average per month, what your sell-through rate is, what your average cost of goods is, what your average sales price is, and see which lever you want to pull and try to improve while trying to keep the other ones constant. That's essentially what your choices are as a reseller. And then the strategy of how to go about doing that is a different topic. So say you decide you want to increase your sales price. That might mean you need to research higher end brands more, figure out how you can source those brands. Say you want to increase your sell-through rate, that might mean that you want to check comps more and really pay attention to what's selling quickly, do more research in terms of that. If you want to increase just your volume, you might need to find a new sourcing method that allows you to buy in bulk. Maybe you just go sourcing more often, maybe you list more often, maybe you hire employees, maybe you hire a virtual assistant. There's a bunch of different strategies that you can take to kind of pull each one of these levers. And maybe you want to lower your cost of goods and you just want to go to the bins. And still you want to be selective, but lowering that cost of goods will have a really massive impact on your gross profits at the end of the month. So there's no one answer, and it really depends on where you're located, what you have access to, what you personally are interested in, and what aligns with the business model that you want to pursue. So I hope that's helpful, and yeah, I would definitely recommend watching that video. The next question really fell into the second category, which is, do you relist? How long will you keep an item for? And what do you do with your unsellable items? Thoughts on marking listings down versus sending larger offers to likers / relisting? How often do you relist? Do you think it helps? A bunch of more questions about relisting. And then what do you do with items that just do not sell? Do you donate, thread up, etc.? So as someone who has limited time, I have actually focused more on just listing new items rather than relisting. However, I think relisting is actually really valuable, especially if you have limited inventory or limited budget. That's something I'm planning on incorporating more this summer. My recommendations for relisting, and I'm not someone who has done a lot of relisting in my reselling career. It is effective, but it's not as effective as listing new items. And if you're choosing where to allocate your time, I would definitely focus more on listing new items. However, if you have extra time, you have limited budget, relisting is really good effort in terms of increasing your sell-through rate. So my recommendations for relisting is Poshmark won't let you copy a listing and relist it within a 60-day period. So I think every 60 days, it might be a good idea to relist your item. When you're relisting, lower your price, potentially change out your cover photo if you have a different one that you think might do better, add keywords, change your title, and make just small tweaks and adjustments that might cause your item to perform better. The reason that you want to relist on Poshmark is simply just because some people shop with the just in filter, and it's not the automatic filter that comes up. So it's really only for people who are shopping by just in. But for people who shop Poshmark regularly and often, I think a lot of them do sort by just in. So another reason I am wanting to relist more is because I'm wanting to experiment with changes to my titles when it comes to this new Poshmark algorithm. So I think that's an added benefit of relisting, is that it gives you an opportunity to not only boost your item within that just-in search, but also lower the price and change your title and see if that leads to a faster sale. And then in terms of getting rid of items, I don't have a shortage of storage space, and that's really the only reason I can think of why you would want to get rid of items that aren't selling. Because once they've been listed, you've done the vast majority of the legwork. You've sourced the item, you've photographed the item, you've created the listing, you have inventoried the item. At that point, especially if you're using automation, there's not really much maintenance that goes into having that item anymore. It's basically just sitting there. And so in terms of relisting, you might want to relist, but if you have a shortage of inventory space, I think it's definitely a good idea to regularly go through your inventory and weed out what's not selling. And yeah, I think ThreadUp or consignment are really good options. I would definitely try those first before just donating to Goodwill or something. But if you don't have a shortage of inventory space, again, I wouldn't worry too much about, getting rid of older items. I would just try different sales generation tactics, especially relisting and lowering the price and making sure that you have automation sending offers to likers. And I still use Posture VA. I think it's a really good bot that shares my closet 3 times a day and sends offers to likers as soon as a like comes in. And it just makes it really, really easy. So if you aren't using automation, highly, highly recommend it. Especially if you have over like 100 active listings. And you can use my code MOGIBETH and you'll get 20% off your first subscription and you'll get 2 weeks free. So I'll put a link in the description down below in case you want to use that as well. Okay, the next topic is Whatnot. Thoughts on Whatnot? Your thoughts on Whatnot? Do you ever see yourself selling on Whatnot? So actually I'm thinking, and if I might have already done it by the time this video comes out, but I doubt it. I am thinking about doing a Whatnot sale. I did apply and I got accepted and I have to do the onboarding. But I'm thinking about doing a Whatnot sale with my items that I have been saving for MOGIBOX, just because I have a lot and I don't have the time to go through them and make boxes. It might just be easier for me to sell them on Whatnot, and just because we had the baby coming and everything like that. And then that way people could get just what they want. They wouldn't have to get a box of things that maybe they want some of those things, but not all of those things. And I'm thinking about just starting it at, $3 or $4 per piece. And people can source through Whatnot from, my bins finds. And so having another way to get inventory. And if that's successful, then maybe I'll keep doing it, I don't know. With a new baby coming, I don't know if I'll be able to really realistically be a Whatnot seller. But I think in terms of the MOGIBOX, that might be a mutually beneficial solution for me to sell that inventory and then other people to source that inventory for their businesses. So we'll see. If I have time, I might try it out. But yeah, let me know in the comments if that's something actually you would be interested in doing. Yeah, okay. So finally, we have random questions. I'm gonna try to make this like a speed round because this video is very much longer than I anticipated. So the first is, can I say I'm a 6-figure reseller if I pass that or when I meet that? So I get this question a lot, like what is a six-figure reseller? And this isn't a term I've made up. It's a term I use, but when I use it, this is what I'm talking about. It means that within one fiscal year, you have sales of $100,000 or more. And so last year we had, I think, $250,000 worth of sales. What it doesn't mean is that like within your entire reselling career, you've sold $100,000 worth of sales. I don't think that would translate into a six-figure reseller. I think it'd have to be within one fiscal or one calendar year you have had 100,000 in sales, and you continue to do so. So that would be how I define it. Okay, another one is, do you ever get overwhelmed with all the stuff being around? I do, and it's wearing on me. Yes, especially when I worked from my house. Luckily now I have an office, which helps a lot because I basically bring my inventory here. I launder the things, stain treat the things that need to be laundered. If I'm doing a haul, I show y'all what I found, I sort it, and then I take it to the office and drop it off, which is amazing. But I still have a lot of, my laundry room is full of items that need to be stain treated. I'm looking at 2 bags now that I need to take to the office. So yeah, that's definitely a common reseller struggle. And my recommendation is just try to stay as organized as possible and don't buy new things before you've processed, stain treated, and photographed, listed everything else. That's the hardest part. Just don't buy new things yet. Don't go thrifting yet. You have stuff that needs to be attended to, and treat it as though it's money just sitting there because you've spent your hard-earned money on those things, and try to honor those things and process those things, and you'll thank yourself in the long run. And then also just have a really solid inventory system if you don't already. Okay, the next is, what happened to the project new business you and Matt have been working on? So I mentioned that earlier. You were really hoping to launch before the baby came. We were actually really close. In late April, we thought we were getting ready to launch, and then something happened that caused a significant delay, unfortunately, and we just kind of had to accept it and re-strategize and reroute, and that's kind of what we're in the middle of doing now. So we are still planning on launching this year. It's just delayed. It's been delayed for quite some time, so it's still very much in the works. It's almost complete. I want to tell y'all about it so badly. I'm so excited about it, and I think it's going to be a really, for lack of a better word, game changer. It's been a game changer in my business, and so I hope that it is for y'all as well, but you can't talk about it yet, and hopefully around the end of the summer, early fall, I'll be able to talk about it. Okay, so the next question is, what is it like working with your partner? I'm curious how couples navigate it successfully. So this is an interesting question. I think, first of all, I think not everyone should work with their partner. I think it's definitely difficult to navigate, and I think there's some relationships that just work better if you keep work separate. For our relationship, there have definitely been some struggles in terms of working together, and I think the biggest one that we still kind of contend with is what to do when we both feel very strongly about going one direction, and then we just have very different ideas of which direction to go. Negotiating that and discussing that is not always easy, especially when neither one of us really leaves our original position. But I will say, I think for us, or for me, I'll talk for me personally, there's so many more pros than cons. Just being able to strategize with my partner, my best friend, and to have discussions about work, which I really love work, and he does too, and just being able to share that part of our lives together is really awesome. Being able to integrate work and life, and like I was talking about earlier, being able to parent together and then work together and then switch on and off and just really operate as a team in all facets of our life. I think it's a really unique way to operate, but it's one that I really love. So it's worth getting through the difficulties in communication, difficulties and disagreements, just because I think it really allows us a lot of flexibility and a lot of collaboration and time together. So it's not for everyone though. We'll definitely say that. Okay. So I'm just going to answer a couple more. Do you think reselling is going to survive inflation? Will we recover, and how? This was interesting. Actually, I asked Matt his opinion on this and we had a long discussion about it. We kind of disagreed, but basically I think right now, at least this is just, you know, me theorizing, but I think right now a lot of people are in shock from inflation, especially with increasing gas prices. And so a lot of people are pulling back on their discretionary spending. And I think because it's summer, and this is the case no matter what summer, the discretionary spending that people are making is usually on experiences. So they're taking vacations, etc. They're not necessarily buying as many things. So that's hurting reselling as well. However, eventually people will have to go back to buying clothes. But when it comes to just purchasing non-essential items, there might be less of that. So that's something that really, this question kind of got me thinking about in terms of sourcing, purchasing more essential items instead of non-essential items when it comes to clothing. So when you think of essential clothing item, you might think of something like a coat, a winter coat, or a bra, or shoes. I think those are more essential. They're things you need, you know, in your wardrobe, as opposed to something like a sequin cocktail dress, or, you know, like a really cute strappy pair of heels, or like a really expensive swimsuit. Something like that would be more non-essential. And what we were disagreeing on is whether higher price point items will hurt more or lower price point items will hurt more. So which business model is going to hurt more, the high ASP or the low COGS business model? And I think volume resellers who specialize in lower priced items are actually going to benefit during this time. He kind of thought the opposite, where the wealthy individuals are hit less by inflation, and so they're going to continue to be able to spend on higher end items. But we both agreed that people who are used to just buying retail, there is definitely going to be a portion of those people who are forced to look to buying resale or buying pre-owned. And that happens, I think, during any recession. So I think reselling actually could benefit in that way, but you know, we'll just have to wait and see. There's a lot of factors at play. It depends on your business model, it depends on what kind of inventory you have, it depends on a lot of things. So, you know, I don't think all resellers are definitely going to be affected in the same way either. Okay, I'll just do one more question. And is YouTube more profitable than reselling on a month-to-month basis? No. And it could be. I think there are definitely reselling influencers who make a whole lot more money on YouTube than they do reselling, and good for them. I mean, it's a lot of work, and if I was better at monetizing this presence, my social media presence, then I could say yes. But typically when you're a YouTuber, you have income from a few different sources. You have ad revenue, which YouTube provides. If you have your channel monetized, you have sponsorships, which I've done a couple, but I could do a whole lot more. And then you have affiliate marketing. So for instance, if you sign up using Poshmark VA, you help support our channel using my code. And there are resellers who do a whole lot more in terms of affiliate marketing than I do as well. So no, I make more from reselling than I do from YouTube. And in fact, I have them into two different businesses. I have the bookkeeping for each. I know for a fact how much I'm making from each. I have one full-time employee for each, but I make more from reselling still. So that could change if I wanted to focus more on sponsorships, focus more on affiliate marketing. But yeah, I put a lot of time into YouTube, but I don't actually make as much money from YouTube. So actually, let me answer this one last question, because it's a short answer. Are you comfortable giving your SSN to eBay or other reselling platforms? Thanks. That's actually one benefit of having a LLC that I didn't think about, is that when you give your SSN, you also have the option of either doing your SSN, your social security number, or your EIN. And when you have an LLC, you have an EIN that you can provide. And so if you feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, providing your social security number to eBay, and it's cheap to set up an LLC in your state, depends on the state, you might want to pursue that option, and in that case you just have to provide your EIN. Okay, well, I'm coming to you from a different point in the future because unfortunately the ending footage got deleted somehow, but I actually think this is a really good place to end the video. And speaking of YouTube, if you haven't already, give this video a big old thumbs up and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. We put out new videos every Monday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, all having to do with reselling and thrifting. Let me know in the comments down below if there are any questions that you want me to answer that I didn't include in this video, and if you want me to do more Q&A videos or Ask Me Anything videos in the future, also let me know. Okay, well with that, I will see y'all in the next one. Okay, love y'all. Bye!